What if you could hit Control Z on any math equation to reverse time and get your original input back? Imagine typing a 10-page essay and you accidentally highlight and delete the entire thing. Panic sets in, right? But then you hit Control Z, the undo button, and boom, your entire essay is right back where it started. It is the greatest safety net in the digital world. Well, what if I told you there's a real-life Control Z for mathematics? Think about it. If mathematical functions are like machines that change inputs into outputs, turning a clean room into a messy one, or turning the number 2 into an 8, an inverse function is that magical Control Z that reverses the process entirely. It takes that messy room and makes it clean again, takes that 8, turns it right back into a 2. So by the end of this explainer, you're going to understand the core logic of inverses, master the visual horizontal line test, apply the step-by-step formula to actually solve them algebraically, and figure out how to graph restricted domains. Let's get right into it. Let's look at the basic mechanics. A regular function, which we call f of x, takes an input, x, and spits out an output, y. The inverse function does the exact opposite. It takes that output, y, uses it as its starting point, and maps it right back to x. So whatever the original function does, the inverse function undoes. It is a perfect closed loop. But wait, this is absolutely crucial. Before we go any further, look at how we write this. We use a little -1 at the top right of the f. This is read as f inverse. Now, a super common mistake students make is thinking that -1 is an exponent. It is not an exponent. It definitely does not mean 1 divided by f of x. It's literally just a label telling us we are looking at the undo machine. Lock that into your brain right now. Now, here's the catch. Before we can undo a process, that process has to be completely unambiguous. Think about our real-life analogy. If I ask you to unbake a cake, you can't just unbake it back into the exact eggs, flour, and sugar, right? The baking process destroyed the original inputs. In math, a perfectly reversible process is called a one-to-one function. The one-to-one rule simply states that every single input must be sent to a distinctly different output. No duplicates allowed. If 2 inputs give you the same output, you would know which one to go back to when you hit undo. So how do we test for this without doing hours of painful algebra? We use something called the horizontal line test. Look at the parabola on the left, f of x equals x squared. If you drop a horizontal line straight across that curve, it hits the graph twice. For example, both +2 and -2 give you an output of 4. So if you're at 4 and want to go backward, where do you go? You don't know. It fails the test. But look at f of x equals x cubed on the right. Any horizontal line you draw will only hit that curve exactly once. It passes the test, meaning it's a one-to-one function and can be perfectly inverted. Okay, now that we understand the visual idea, let's jump into the formula. How do we actually calculate an inverse function? Well, it takes just 2 surprisingly simple steps. Step 1, write out the equation as y equals f of x, and use your algebra skills to solve for x. Step 2, once x is completely by itself, you simply interchange or swap the variables x and y. That new equation? That's your inverse function. Let's make this super concrete with an example. Imagine I write the function f of x equals 3x minus 4 on the board. Following step 1, we set it up as y equals 3x minus 4. Our goal is to isolate x. We add 4 to both sides, which gives us 3x equals y plus 4. Then we divide the whole thing by 3. We're left with x equals the quantity y plus 4 all divided by 3. Now for step 2, just swap the x and y. So our final result is f inverse of x equals the quantity x plus 4 over 3. See, you just mathematically engineered an undo button for that specific equation. Now you might be asking a really great question here. If we're fundamentally swapping x and y at the very end of our formula, what exactly happens to the domain and range? Do the boundaries of our graph completely change? The answer is actually quite elegant. The domain of your original function, all those possible x values, becomes the range of the inverse function. And the range of the original function, all your possible y outputs, becomes the exact domain of the inverse. They literally just trade places. Everything that was an x becomes a y, and everything that was a y becomes an x. And because of this complete coordinate swap, graphing inverses is incredibly satisfying. The crucial thing to remember is the symmetry rule. The graph of an inverse function is a perfect reflection of the original function across the invisible diagonal line y equals x. Imagine taking a piece of paper and folding it right along that diagonal line. If you have a coordinate at 2, 5 on the original function, the ink would transfer and reflect right across that crease to become 5, 2 on the inverse graph. It's a perfect mirror image. Wait, hold on. Let's pause here. This is important. Earlier, we established that the parabola f of x equals x squared failed the horizontal line test. It had two inputs for the same output. So, what do we actually do with problem children like this? Do we just throw our hands up and say they can never be undone?
Absolutely not. Instead, we use a masterclass mathematical technique. We restrict the domain. To tame x squared, we simply chop off the left half of the graph. If we restrict the domain to only numbers greater than or equal to 0, so the interval from 0 to infinity, we're only looking at the right side of the U-shape. And guess what? Suddenly, that single curved line passes the horizontal line test with flying colors. Because we restricted the domain, it's now a one-to-one function, and the inverse of this newly restricted function just becomes the square root of x. We literally forced a non-invertible function to become invertible just by setting strict boundaries.
Okay, let's connect this to something even more complex. We've handled basic algebra, we teamed a parabola, but let's move to the ultimate challenge, trigonometric functions. Think about a standard sine wave. It oscillates up and down, repeating infinitely in both directions. If you draw a horizontal line through a sine wave, it's going to intersect that graph an infinite number of times. It is literally the furthest thing from one-to-one. So we've got to use our restricting domain trick again, but this time with precision slicing. What's really interesting here is how we standardize these slices. For the sine function, we restrict the domain from negative pi over 2 to positive pi over 2. That captures exactly one full curve from the lowest valley to the highest peak. For cosine, we slice it differently, restricting it from 0 to pi. By locking them into these specific windows, they stop repeating. They become one-to-one, and because of that, we get a beautiful, clean inverse domain for both of them, ranging perfectly from -1 to +1. Let's see how this plays out in practice. Evaluating inverse trig functions requires a slight mental shift. When you see the notation inverse sine, which is also commonly called arc sine, you shouldn't think of it as a rote calculation. Instead, ask yourself, which angle gives us this specific value? For example, let's evaluate the inverse sine of negative square root of 3 over 2. Don't panic at the root. Just ask, what angle, sitting between our restricted boundaries of negative pi over 2 and pi over 2, has a sine of negative root 3 over 2? If you know your unit circle, the answer clicks right into place. It's negative pi over 3. But watch out, because here is a massive trap that catches students on exams all the time. Let's look at a composition of functions. If an inverse is truly an undo button, you'd probably assume that taking the inverse sine of the sine of pi would just perfectly undo itself and leave you with pi. It seems like the functions should just cancel each other out, right? But if you type that into a calculator, it absolutely does not equal pi. Why? Here's the exact reason why, and it goes right back to those boundaries we set. The inverse sine function is strictly restricted. It can only ever output angles between negative pi over 2 and positive pi over 2. The angle pi is way outside that window. It's totally off limits. So instead of magically canceling out, you have to evaluate it from the inside out. First, what is the sine of pi? Well, it's 0. Okay, now what is the inverse sine of 0? It's 0. The undo button is incredibly powerful, but it only works perfectly if you stay within the strict boundaries of the restricted domain. Before we wrap up, let's quickly summarize the key takeaways from today. Inverses are your mathematical undo buttons. For that button to even exist, a function must be one-to-one, meaning it strictly passes the horizontal line test with no duplicate outputs. To algebraically find the formula, solve for x, then simply swap x and y. And finally, if a function is a problem child that repeats itself like a parabola or a continuous trig wave, you don't just give up. You strategically restrict the domain to force it to become invertible. So, we've successfully built our Control plus Z machine. We know exactly how to reverse engineer equations, reflect graphs perfectly across a diagonal line, and set boundaries to tame wild functions. But I want to leave you with a provocative thought. Now that we have this inverse function, this powerful undo button, how in the world do we find its derivative in calculus? How fast is the undo button changing? That is exactly the mystery we're going to unlock in our next explainer. Keep practicing.